I'd like to call to order the May 21st meeting of the New Canaan Board of Education meeting. In front of you, you have the, well, actually, why don't we start, why don't we do the minutes first, that's fine. Could I get a motion to approve the May 7th meeting minutes?
So moved.
Penny, second. Brendan, all those in favor?
Discussion?
Sure.
I had mentioned that I thought for executive session, we can refer to real estate, but we have to be a little bit more specific, meaning real estate regarding alternative high school. So under section 9, can we be more specific in executive session reference?
I think, in
I
our...
think we're supposed to be more specific.
No.
I think we're supposed to be...
I think we are, though. Like, real estate is allowed to be...
So having looked at and spoken with the attorney around that, the challenge is if you can have real estate on there, and then if there is, if a conversation or more information could impact the sale, the price, whether you're buying or leasing or renting or whatever, then it doesn't have to be disclosed. What happens is if the transaction occurs, then of course that would be disclosed. So since there's no voting that would occur in executive session, because it never does, the content of the conversation could remain confidential until such time that a decision is made, something is executed or something is purchased or what have you, and then that would be made public, is how that goes. So there's no expectation to be more descriptive around it, given that it is one of the topics that under the FOI Commission, you're allowed to have an executive session that way. So.
Right, but from what I've read, it can be more clarifying, so it would be executive session regarding real estate in relation to alternative high school, or whatever the topic was. Otherwise, how would the public know?
That's
kind of the point of the
real
executive
estate
session,
real estate is a covered issue that can be discussed in private.
Right.
Yeah, we don't have to be more descriptive.
Right.
It doesn't make sense for us to.
At the time that it's appropriate, then it will be brought up in public. And I think we had that discussion with you when you asked the question, online before this meeting. So you raised the question, and we brought the answer to you before.
Okay.
I think it's so to bring it back up.
Well, you're not really supposed to discuss via email.
No, but we just gave you the answer, so, when you asked the question last week, so. Okay. Are there any other comments or questions? Okay, all those in favor of the minutes? Any opposed? Okay. Thank you. And it is a majority of those present, so they pass. So moving on to review and approval of the agenda. I'd like to make a motion to move the Goal 5 presentation that's listed third under Reports and Recognition to first, and then we'll have School Climate Update with Dr. Bliss, and then the Tri-State Summary with Dr. Correnti. If I could get a second?
So moved.
Penny, all those in favor? Thank you. And then if I could get a motion to approve the agenda as amended. Jen, second. Katrina, all those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Okay. Moving on to comments from the public. To ensure the public's right to be heard, the board has set aside time during the meeting for public comments. 2 minutes will be allotted to each speaker and a maximum of 15 minutes to each subject. Do I have anyone wishing to address the board this evening?
I would.
You can say your name and...
Yeah, hi, David Rucci. I just wanted to address the board. I kind of drew the short straw with our group this week. I'm part of a group that many of you know, the later start time. And really, we've taken the position that you should be moving start times for the 7th and 12th grade up to 8:30. I was moved by the effect of the earlier start times that I've had on my older daughters. Now my son will enter 7th I grew up here, I went through the public schools here, I was even part of, Center School, which is no longer here, so I have a long history with this particular with this particular district, and I feel pretty strongly about this particular issue. We talked to Dr. Letzi back in 2016. He was very receptive to the idea. He helped us a lot as far as how he was going to move forward with the looking at this particular issue. We had hoped initially that we would sort of be a part of that, but we understand, and I understand really how this particular group is going to work as far as their committees and being careful with bringing different things up to the public at certain times. I respect that. I understand it. It makes sense to me. We, though, as a group, have continued to gather data. We've set up a website. We've set up a newsletter. We have about 500 to 600 people that are involved right now who've liked to petition to do this. We ask that you all visit the website in the coming weeks. We understand that next month, Dr. Letzi will prepare or have some thoughts and reports on how maybe the district should be moving forward as far as a later start time. We actually don't believe that Dr. Letzi should be doing this on his own. It's very difficult, all the research that we've done, for a superintendent to sort of be in charge of this. He's going to get a lot of internal pressures from other places, and we understand that that's a problem for him, and it's not easy for him to sort of negotiate through that. Generally, that internal opposition is going to come from athletic departments, transportation personnel, teachers, people that don't want to change. And it's hard. It's hard on the superintendent, and we think, as our group and others, that we should be 2 minutes? Oh, how long is 2 minutes?
2 minutes.
Am I at 2 minutes?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, can I just say one more thing?
Quickly.
I strongly encourage that the board implement a stronger start time. I'm sorry, I didn't realize that. I go by the hour. I'm a billable hour guy. That's not really fair to me. I would say it's a really important decision, a really important policy decision. I think that actually this board, we have smart people in this room, we have smart people in this community. This will be really one of the most important decisions, health decisions, that you guys can make, and I encourage you all to do that. Sorry, I didn't realize that was 2 minutes.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else who wishes to address the board? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to reports and recognition, and our first presentation with Dr. Keating, our Goal 5 presentation. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everybody. Honored to be here today to present Goal 5, Stewardship of Our Resources. And we're going to take a look at the different ways that the district over the past 3 years have put together some pretty decent cost savings for the district. And so Goal 5 is about stewardship. So we're going to specifically zero in on employee benefits, facilities, transportation, operations for both business and in the area of special education. And I'm not keeping up. And through the lens of leadership, we're going to look at these areas for cost savings, cost avoidance, revenues that we've brought into the district to offset our operating budget, one-time incentives that we've received. We also want to talk about the service partnerships we have with the town, which are many and helpful and beneficial for the school district. And then we want to show you a few things that we have on the drawing board that we're looking at right now. When we go into contract negotiations, especially with the teachers, we all recognize that about 80% of our operating budget is devoted to our staff for either salaries or benefits. And the area that we can be creative in and have some good, thoughtful conversations is around the type of health benefits that we offer our employees.
Joanne, can you move the mic just a little closer to you?
Sure.
Thank you. Thanks.
I know, I don't talk too much. So some of the things that we look at are plan design changes that are out in the market that are being worked on in other districts, and some creative things that we can do in our district. We look at cost-sharing options that we have as well. And so those two components, as we work them both together, as you will see on the next page or so, do generate quite a bit of savings for the school district. And it's really the one thing that we're able to use to offset our salaries, because salaries grow at a much lower rate than health insurance does. You have close to double-digit increases with trend in some years, whereas your salaries are in your lower percentages. So we really work that fairly good. We look at competitive bidding and stop-loss, life, and long-term disability. We work with our carrier on rebates, performance guarantees, and other offsets we can get through the administrative fee process. And then I think you did a great thing here prior to my time, but we wanted to show it, is that you had a strategy to shift retirees off of the Cigna plan into the state TRB plan. And you're going to be surprised, I think, by some of the savings that were generated. So starting with contract negotiations, shifting the certified over and the non-certs, with the exception of custodians, they have yet to go over. Our annual savings in those areas are $591,000. We were able to get about $11,000 in plan design changes with the custodians last time, but they're in that high-cost PPO, and they already have very high deductibles and co-insurances, so the dollar value of those changes were minimal. And then for every % that we increase our cost sharing each year, it's about $145,000 that the district gets, and that's pretty much where we've been. So negotiations on an annual basis over the last 3 years annually generated $747,000 in savings, which is pretty significant. Moving over to competitive bidding, our stop-loss insurance has really been one of the areas that has been a challenge to address. We had some high years of claimants that came through that really threw off our specific, and the district had been with Cigna prior to my arriving here. We did a competitive bid, ended up increasing the threshold for specific from 100,000 to 300, I believe, and changed carriers, and that did save us a significant amount of money, but it certainly did add some more risk onto the district. Fortunately, during those 2 first years, our claims improved. So we saved money, we weren't paying the higher premiums. And in the 3rd year, which is the year we're in right now, we went out to bid with the town, and we saved about $193,000 by changing carriers again, but lumping the business together with the town and having more purchasing power. So those, on an average for the 3 years, is $310,000 savings per year. We go out on life and long-term disability. We went out last year. We switched carriers again. Not a large number, but $16,000 on a $150,000 bill is a good percentage-wise that we saved. So through competitive bidding, we've saved $326,000 on an annual basis, and this is in health insurance alone. So moving on to carrier agreements, TRB plan, and the annual savings from shifting for the TRB. We get rebates for our pharmacy from our carrier, and so we share in their business model. What we're able to save them, they share a portion of that or rebate us a portion of those savings. Performance guarantees are written into the contract, and we get $47,000 a year. If they performed at 100%, that number would be 0, but they are in the 90% performance area, so we do get some money there. And Joe worked with them to offset a lot of our administrative fees, and we saved about $10,000 on that annual bill, or $49,000. So the total of those items are $304,000. Transitioning employees from our plan to TRB saved the district $202,000. And if you just consider that, I mean, that's a significant amount of money. The plan is better and less costly for them, and that experience is taken out of our experience mod. So the annual savings in this area of health benefits is $506,000, and the total savings that we feel are quantifiable on an annual basis for health insurance are $1,579,000. And it's one of the areas we're most proud of. Moving on to facilities, there's a lot of work that's been done in facilities that we can't quantify, and I'm going to mention a few of those areas at the end. But the things that we are able to quantify in terms of savings are our energy conservation projects. And back a few years ago, Bob Willoughby and the superintendent signed an LOA, an agreement with Eversource, for 12 specific projects, and they estimated what the annual savings were for those 12 projects. We will have completed 10 of those 12 projects through the end of the summer, and then we'll have 2 carrying over for next summer. And the big portion of these projects, in addition to CO and comfort level and conserving heat in classrooms are lighting retrofit projects, and they go through and they literally relamp the entire school. So we not only get brand-new lights, better lighting for our students, but we save money on replacement. We don't have to replace all those fixtures, which are in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. So those two big projects in 2002 are SACs in the high school. This summer, we're doing all of the elementary schools. And we also have a program that we put in to control our demand, because as you use, your demand goes up at the peak point during the year. That's what you end up paying for the entire year. So what we do is we work with the system, and we put thresholds where our systems are not allowed to go up beyond 650 kilowatts. Last year, we peaked at 804. So that differential is a big differential that you then carry on for months. And so we're working hard to bring those numbers down. We piloted it at the high school, and we plan to put it in the other schools. As I mentioned, there's cost avoidance on lighting fixture replacement. This is just the 17,000 bulbs that we go through on an annual basis. It's not even taking down the fixtures and redoing them. And then earlier this year, I renegotiated the commodity rate of the electricity bill, and we saved $90,000. So the annual savings in facilities is $259,000. I would mention a few things, though, that I think the board should be aware of. We have a fairly robust preventative maintenance program. And while it's hard to quantify how far that you extend the useful life of an asset because of that preventative maintenance program, we can say that we create more comfort in our schools, and that they operate smoother, and that they're cleaner. Dan has the task of looking at the dollars on that. We're going to try to quantify that for the board, because we do spend money in our budget for operating, but we get systems that cost $3 million to replace, like a roof, that you get another 5 years out of. And that's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. So that's something that we're going to be looking at for the next report. In addition to the energy conservation projects that we have, and we're saving money in our operating budget, we also receive incentive payments from Eversource. They actually come from the Connecticut Energy Fund. And so those projects, by the time everything is completed next year, will generate $226,000 in actual payments to the district. And what we use that money for is the replacement projects. We put it right back into energy conservation. Transportation, we've had some savings as well. We recently renegotiated our transportation contract last year, or in the first year. Went to cycling out all of the diesel fuel buses to propane over a 3-year period. So we expect to save about 20% per year in fuel savings, which is $18,000. But we also looked at what the market was doing at the time we were going to be going out to bid. There was 5 or 6 other contracts out to bid at the time, and those 5 or 6 contracts were coming in on rebid in the mid to upper 8 to 10% range. DACO came to us and asked us if we were aware of what was going on in the market, and we weren't. I wasn't really plugged into it at that time, because we were just starting to get our bid specs together. So we did some research, and we found out that that was true, that the bids were coming in significantly higher. So we sat down with DACO over a couple of negotiation sessions, and we really worked at the numbers and told them what we were looking for in terms of our service. We wanted to maintain the high level of service that we have. We wanted to work with a partner as we look at different configurations for our school start and end time. We wanted to keep our pricing down, and we wanted them to provide the same level of safety service that they had as well. So they came up in with pricing for renewal without going to bid at less than, it was 2.95, 2.95, 3, 3.25, 3.25. And so just based on the information, and this is the lower end, the 2.5% that we think that at a minimum we would have spent if we went out to bid, is $77,000 a year over the life of a 5-year contract. So we felt that that was a good decision. We brought it to Ed Resources, and we talked about it there pretty thoroughly. Other research, strategies in the area of transportation include prepayment discounts. We pay them twice a year rather than every month. It saves us money in-house processing these payments, but it also saves us 1% on our total $3 million bill. And the other thing that we've waived out of the contract, it's included in the contract, but we don't take it, is the performance bond, and that's $25,000. So total annual savings on transportation are $151,000. There's a list of kind of hodgepodge things under operations that we wanted to bring to your attention. When we insourced payroll, not paying ADP saved us $92,000 a year. When we outsourced postage, we were able to divest ourselves of some very expensive equipment, and the net savings to the district once we pay the service is $23,000. We reorganized support staff for technology and facilities in the business office, and we saved 1 FTE. Dara's done some great work this year and over the last couple of years, bringing some vital services in-house that we were paying significant fees for out-of-house. And they're the BCBA, the speech, the OTPT, and nursing. And just this year, it's $152,000, which is a significant amount of money. We changed cell carriers to 34, and we saved $34,000. We just renegotiated our transaction fees on everything that we bring into the district electronically, and we saved $11,000. We bid out every year our interscholastic accident insurance. This year we saved $6,000. And Tracy went through our Munis modules and just cleaned it up, did some housekeeping, and we eliminated the modules that we don't currently use and saved $12,000. So those savings were $383,000. And finally, we wanted to talk a little bit about revenues. As you know, the town retains the excess cost revenue for the district. So historically in the past, about 3 or 4 years ago, rather than giving the town or the board that money to credit against the operating budget, they retained it in their coffers. At that time, it was about $600,000. It's $1 million now. I would say safely some of it has to do with some of the actual funds being greater than they had been in the past from the state. But I think based on the way that we're doing the excess cost calculation, about 30% of that increase really can be credited to how Laura does that work down in Dar's office. Other offsets that we use to our budget for revenues are preschool, $76,000, gate receipts, $21,000, parking fees, $19,000, and the boosters do offset our budget for coaches of $157,000. So the total for there is $273,000. We also wanted to note our partnerships with the town. We have some great partnerships with the town that are financially beneficial. Grounds maintenance, technology infrastructure, safety and security, SROs, crossing guards, access to resources such as the fire marshal, the building inspector, the town administrator, the public works director, et cetera. We work very closely with them, and they're very supportive and helpful. We cooperatively bid our stop loss, and we look forward to doing bidding in other areas as well. And the internal audit is another area that we work cooperatively with the town. So we have a few things on the drawing board. We have natural gas coming into town, as everybody knows, and we're very excited about that. It's a lower cost commodity, which will, perhaps not next year because we have to do retrofitting, but the year after, will have a significant impact on our budget of close to $200,000, give or take. We're going to avoid replacing the oil tanks, which is a big ticket number. It's about 150 a school. 4 of them had to be replaced. That's $600,000 less than capital. And just something small, but we won't have to clean our boilers like we did with oil. That's $18,000 that's in our budget that won't have to be spent. As I mentioned before, we're doing the energy conservation projects, the LED lighting at Saks and the high school in 2020. Not up here is the microgrid. And I have to tell you, I put the wrong presentation on your file. There's a few changes we made earlier, but the microgrid is so exciting. We're just learning about it. It could really transform how we provide electricity to Saks, South, and the high school. We just had our first meeting, and it was really great. So we're looking forward to learning more about that. We're out to bid, and we spent most of today interviewing reproduction equipment vendors. And we think that we have a good possibility of really shaving some significant dollars off of that $400,000 appropriation. DAR's looking at the alternative high school and at accepting students into our launch program on a revenue basis. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Keating. I just wanted to thank you and Dan Clark and John Perna and Tracy for all your efforts in, sort of helping to make a lot of these things reality. I mean, I think it highlights the benefit of having our, finance and operations person all in one, position. You get to see from a holistic view sort of how the district operates. So we can't thank you enough, all of you, for all your efforts on behalf of the district. It's pretty impressive. I mean, if I look at the summary page, and I think there might be a slight update to it, but, you're talking, $2.6 million or plus or minus based on all your work. So I want to thank you, and I think it's important for the community to know that, the district is always looking at ways to rationalize costs. And then I'd also like to thank the teachers and the administrators and the staff for sort of their partnership in a lot of the healthcare renegotiations that we've done to help benefit the district. It's not easy, but it's for everyone's benefit, and I'd like to thank everybody publicly for their efforts on behalf of the district for that. So if there's any comments or questions, Brennan?
I've got a bunch of questions, so maybe I'll just go through them. So first, can you just talk a little bit about how competitive bidding works and what our processes are? I know it can be different depending upon what you're bidding out, but just how we typically approach that.
Sure. So we use competitive bidding in-house for large items, anything over 10 or 15,000, depending on what the item is. And so, for example, the copier bid recently went out. And we looked at other districts, recent RFPs from other districts. We looked at our own internal needs. We looked at the structure of the district. And we put together a specification that was rather comprehensive. And it took into account our needs for copying and printing. It took a look at how we would possibly scale that down a little bit and do it differently. So with less pieces of equipment, but not really compromising the services to our staff. Once that's completed, we vetted that out for about a month because we had a lot of things we had to think about in terms of options. Once it's set, it goes out on the street, and we publish it. And generally speaking, there is a mandatory walkthrough for most of our projects. We have the vendors come in. We contact everybody we know of. We go to the state bid list. We go to, CASBO. We find out who the vendors are, CREC. And so we mail it out. We make personal contact wherever we can. And then we go through our walkthrough. And the walkthrough for that particular project started here. We had 40 or 50 people here in this room. And we give them an overview of what we are looking for. We tried to give them an understanding. We didn't end up going to the elementary, so we had maps here. They were projected here, and we had Scott Barnett, who is our technology manager, give a deep explanation of everything they were looking at. We walked this school in Saks. And then we give them some time to prepare their response, their RFP. When the responses are due, it's a set time in my office. We open them, read them aloud, and we allow the vendors to take a look at everybody else's proposal. And we lined them all up on the cabinets. And then we go through a lengthy process of qualifying the bidders. And we had 5 bidders on that particular project. One was disqualified for an irregularity in the bid. And there was one who arrived late that we could not accept his bid. So once we do that, we had all 4 of the qualified bidders come in today. It was a long day. And we have a great group here. There's 12 people, staff, teachers, administrators, you name it. So we're going to vet them out, and we'll come up with the best option for the district, and then enter into contract negotiations with them. But that's typically how we handle it. Dan's work is done in consultation with architects, engineers at times.
Okay, great, thank you. Second one was, I saw in here both insourcing and outsourcing. Why one versus the other in particular areas?
Price and service is what it comes down to.
Okay, so in some cases, outsourcing is less expensive and better service. In other cases, insourcing is less expensive and better service.
Sure. And it all depends on how much control you would like to have over that particular service.
Right.
So we insourced payroll. That was important that we had control over that, complete control over the process for a number of good reasons. And then outsourcing is, we found we were spending $35,000 a year on renting postage equipment and the staff to do all of that work. And the outside service is $15,000. So we got out of the contracts, and it seems to be working. It's not as good as doing it yourself, I've heard from a few people. But we're learning with it and getting better with that.
Great. The last one, I think it's the last one, is can you just talk a little bit about the energy conservation, what's been paid by, I think some had been paid by Eversource, what we have had to pay for, and then also what is a microgrid?
Okay.
Thanks.
Well, a microgrid is a box, basically, that you build on your property. And it generates electricity, but it has a byproduct of hot water, for better lack of a word, steam, that you can use to heat your buildings as well. So it gives you two sources of energy. It's either run by what I can only describe as generators, but they have a different, nicer name, but that are 125 kilowatts, or a fuel cell, which is a completely different type of a technology. It works on these pans that create friction, and friction creates energy. The fuel cells are the ones that give off the thermal. I don't believe the generators do. I don't know where Dan went, but the generators don't give off the steam. Mm-hmm. So they're looking at both options. The fuel cell's more expensive, but they're going to partner hopefully with third party, a PPA, so you get a power purchase agreement rather than coming up with millions of dollars to have to actually invest.
Yeah. Okay. And for the energy conservation projects, has Eversource funded most of those or all of them?
They fund a portion of them. To be honest with you, some projects they fund at a higher level, like lighting retrofit is a high payback. You save energy, like a 2-year payback on the cost on that. So what they did here is they blended it with projects that take have longer paybacks. And it's called a combined or a comprehensive program, which generated about $56,000 more for the district, which I thought was very creative. But no, what we do generally is pay for 60 to 70% of the project, either through 0% financing, through Eversource, through one of their vendors, or capital through the town, which currently we have both sources.
Okay. Thanks.
Other questions or comments? Penny?
So how does the fuel cell work with solar energy? Can you have both at each school, or does one preempt the other?
Yeah, we learned the other day you can. In fact, one of the things that they're working with a technical expert in this area, and he is actually going to look at the roof systems, look at the capacity of the roofs, and try to come together in understanding the tariffs, which is a part of this, and the credits that you can receive, which are different for solar than they are for microgrid. Just come up with the best bundled project that generates the most savings for the district and the town.
And is there, without any time frame for either of those projects that we're looking at, or too soon to discuss that?
Well, we don't have an exact time frame, but they're eager to get things going, I would say.
Yeah, part of the discussion, excuse me, and the timeliness of the microgrid discussion is that Eversource does want us to put this microgrid in place, and as incentive for that, they're talking about running the natural gas to West School. So we're looking at it to see how it all would work, but if if it does work out for the district, for the town to do this, it would probably take at least another year, if not a little bit longer, for the installation and the planning, although we don't know exactly. But that would, with a commitment, they would commit to running natural gas over to West School, and I think to Country Day over there as well. So there is not urgency, but certainly we want to keep momentum going on this. Because it's very exciting. You know, the chemical reaction of the fuel cell, which works through the natural gas that's going to be coming in, is enough. It would be powering a portion of the high school, of Saks, of South, and they're even talking about Waveney and the Y as possibilities, depending upon how this is all put together. So it's a way to, it's more green energy, and if you couple that with the natural gas and with a possibility of solar, I think it's really an environmentally friendly way that we can save money for the town, and it builds some redundancy in the electrical grid so that if there is a problem, the buildings would be powered as well. So it helps for emergency shelter purposes and things like that. So it's really very exciting.
It's fabulous.
We're going to have a building committee on it, Penny. We already volunteered you for it.
Any other questions or comments?
I guess.
Brennan?
Yeah, one more. So all this is excellent, obviously, but I guess one thing I'd just point out is it looks like some of these numbers are not annual, so they're over time. And I just wanted to ask the question: is some of this stuff that you could expect to do every year, or are these kind of one-time, type cost savings? In other words, are you going to get, would we get $1.5 to $2.5 million of cost savings every year and be able to repeat this year after year?
It depends on the opportunities that come before us. You never say never. I think with health insurance, it went from, your traditional indemnity plan, then it took a few years to get to the PPO plan, then it took 5-6 years to get to the HDHP. So
Right.
there's years in there that you're not upping your savings on an annual basis by big numbers.
Right.
But you're always looking forward to things like that. And if a grant comes up where we can do a project that saves hundreds of thousands of dollars, we'll go for it. So I think it's opportunity-driven as well as being pragmatic about good business. I will say that some things that we can't quantify here are saving us money. For example, we've changed a lot of our business office and our business practices in the district with policies and procedures. Now, we know that it's good business, but we also know that in there's efficiencies that are created by processes and procedures. So I don't think it's a comprehensive list of everything we've done in the last few years, to be honest with you. But I don't also think that, we can expect to have a couple $1 million savings every year.
Right. Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you,
Thank you.
Dr. Keating. All right, so the next item on our agenda is the school climate update with Dr. Bliss.
Good evening. So glad to be here tonight to share with you some of the exciting work we've been doing this year on school climate. I've just been so thrilled to be a part of this district who has put this as a priority, so it's been a pleasure to be a part of that. We wanted to start with goal number 4, which you're familiar with: promote an environment that fosters respect, ethical behavior, and responsible global citizenship. And what I'd like to do is kind of walk through some of the objectives of this goal tonight and tell you about the progress that we've made on each of them. These 3 characteristics are obviously so important for our students, both in terms of classroom success as well as success in their lives and their careers. So important. In fact, one of the things I wanted to share with you, I think I've got a stack of research papers on my desk, so I'm going to limit myself to one. But this was a wonderful article that came out actually this year from Harvard University. And what they did is combine and compile all of the data around social emotional learning and academics. And what they concluded was that actually looking at the decades of research in neurobiology and education, we know that the social emotional and the cognitive and academic are completely combined. And what's so important is that if you have strengths in one area, it's going to lead to strengths in others. Similarly, if you have difficulties in one area, that leads to difficulties in others. So we know that all of them are central to learning, and all of the evidence that they're presenting, having looked at this really 20 years of evidence, is that social emotional learning is so important in terms of increasing persistence in kids, pro-social behavior, improving grades, improving scores on standardized tests, obviously improving relationships and mental and physical health, as well as career success. So it's exciting where we are in terms of the research and the neurobiology of this, and to understand that learning really is that connection between social emotional and cognitive academic, and we can't look at one without the other. So one of our objectives in terms of our district goal number 4 is to use SAPL to guide and support responsive teaching and school services. And so I wanted to share with you a couple of things that we've been working on with this. SAPL, as you know, is our social, academic, and personal learning framework that we developed out of national standards. We have national standards around teaching social and emotional learning. So we really have done some amazing work in New Canaan to develop this framework. Over the past 5 years, what we didn't really have is a way to use that framework to guide services, and that's something that we've been working more on. So the first thing that we did this year was to develop report card indicators. We've never had a way to identify kids systematically who might be struggling, for example, in social emotional issues and behavior. We've always had in our report cards an area for learning characteristics, which really was basically looking at the social emotional, but we didn't align it with our SAPL framework. So what we've done this year is to align those learning characteristics with our SAPL framework so that we can quickly see where a child may be having a difficulty. The SAPL framework really covers those national standards of self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. So if we see a child's having a difficulty in one of those areas, we're going to have an easier time identifying it. We're also going to have an easier time identifying across the district whether there are any of these particular areas that kids are struggling more. For example, we've heard a lot in focus groups that kids are having more difficulties with relationship skills. We think it has to do with technology, but that's something that we're going to have to, increase our teaching to that. So that's just one example. So we've done that. We also are working on, a lot about the response to intervention plan. That's a state mandate. We talk a lot about academics, but there's also RTI for social, emotional, and behavioral issues. So we've been really trying to use a more systematic way of approaching that. For example, first of all, in Tier 1, we're very excited. I'm going to talk more in a minute about having some explicit instruction for all kids across the district in social emotional issues and learning. So I'll tell you a little bit more about that. And in Tier 2, which is small groups, when we identify that a child might be having some difficulty in one of these areas of decision-making or relationship skills, we've expanded services and small groups that are voluntary, but we do have, for example, stress-less groups in the middle school. We have made it volunteer, and we had over 200 kids sign up for it, and they've had such positive responses to that. It's an 8-week group. It just teaches them skills, and the responses have been great about, I can now take a test, and I'm not worried, and really some positive things. And so also in terms of social skills, that's another group that we've developed and started this year. So those are just a couple of examples of trying to expand Tier 2, and it's really about prevention. It's really about trying to help kids before they get into trouble. The other thing we did was put into our plan, the 6th grade advisory. We haven't had that, and we had a lot of feedback that there's a big transition, and we do a lot of work from 4th to 5th grade. But when kids go from 5th to 6th, that's actually a very big transition. They lose that one adult. And so it's a 6-week or 8-week advisory that focuses on helping them to have that one adult who they can stay with and to help them with study skills and setting goals, and also has one session on stress management. So just a couple of things we've been doing to use our SAPL to support our services. Objective number 2 is to develop and implement a K-12 district climate plan, and our plan this year has really been focused on developing emotional intelligence across the district. It was very exciting this summer when many of the leaders, Brian and Jill and Darlene and I, were able to go to Yale University and learn their model for increasing emotional intelligence. We were very excited about and impressed by the research behind it, brought it back. We've had actually 5 teams actually go to Yale and be trained, and that was K through 8. The K through 8 groups actually went in October, and came back very excited and spent October through very recently teaching. It's a train-the-trainer model, so they were teaching the teachers the skills of emotional intelligence. We've had some wonderful feedback about that, which I'll share with you in a minute. The high school team actually just went to the training in March, and so they had a beginning rollout in April, which was very well received. So I'm very excited because I really do believe that we have to start with the adults. It's about adults being able to manage and have better relationships, and it's those interactions that when kids come to school every day really make the school climate. So I'm excited that we're going to have a really district-wide initiative in this. Just as a reminder, I know we went over this earlier with the board in September, but Ruler is an evidence-based program that teaches the skills of emotional intelligence, which are to recognize, understand, label, express, and regulate. And it's been something that we've been excited to bring across the district. We are going to be rolling out to students K through 8 starting next year. So the high school will still be learning for just the adults, but K through 8 will be students. And Ruler has a number of what we call anchor tools, just to give you a flavor of what is taught to all of the adults. One of them is called the Charter. The Charter is really just a joint mission statement that helps everybody agree on how they want to feel in the work environment. The Mood Meter is another tool that we've used to increase self-awareness and recognition of other people's feelings. Meta Moment is a wonderful skill that helps us to take a moment to kind of breathe between a stimulus and a response, so that we help adults and kids to be able to regulate their emotions. Blueprint is something that helps kids with interpersonal difficulties and conflict, which we know they have a lot of, trying to help them to think about how another person feels and with perspective taking. So those are a number of the tools that we'll be helping kids with this coming year. So this is just a photo of one of our professional developments where all of the adults were working on their charters. They worked on what 5 words they want to feel at work, and then they decide on how they are going to feel that way. What kinds of behaviors would they need to demonstrate in order to feel that way, and finally, how will they prevent and manage unwanted feelings? So if there's conflict, how do you deal with that? Do you go to the source? Do you communicate? And the response has been really wonderful to see the faculty work together and the staff. We did also include TAs in this work who work closely with some of our more vulnerable kids, and we feel like that's been really wonderful, and Joanne and Matt will talk a little bit more about that. Just wanted to talk a little bit about how nicely SAPL and Ruler go together, and this was one of the reasons that we did choose this particular model. So for each of our 5 SAPL domains, self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship skills and decision-making, there is a specific Ruler skill to help to teach to that. So again, this is going to be one of the first times we've done this, of course. We've been, all teachers always have social emotional learning as part of their classrooms, but this will be the first time we'll have a common language, and that's really what we thought was so important, that kids would have the same language kindergarten through 12th grade. So this is just a little bit of some of the data that we did keep, had exit tickets after our PLs, and this is district-wide data. It includes the high school as well. So the questions were, did they understand what emotional intelligence is? Is it clear? And 90% agreed or strongly agreed with that. 87% said emotional intelligence was helpful to them in their own lives. 89% said it was helpful in their teaching. 92% felt that this particular model was helpful with the students. And 83% said they were enthusiastic about the initiative. I picked a high bar there by enthusiastic, so I was a little disappointed in the number, but I think that really speaks to, it's a strong number when we think about enthusiasm for a district initiative. So these are just a couple of faculty responses I wanted to share because it was just so wonderful, and it really was overwhelming in terms of the qualitative data that people were quite thankful. So you can read through them, but just a couple. I'm excited to embark on this journey. Happy kids are better learners. I love the focus on positivity in our schools and appreciate the efforts. Thank you. So we've had a really nice response from teachers across the board. One of our other district goals is around professional learning. So objective 3 is to provide professional learning opportunities and research-based prevention, intervention, and reporting protocols. We've been very fortunate to have some amazing presenters this year. We did a lot of thinking before deciding on our PL for the year. And some of the things that we were hearing a lot about, of course, is stress. And we know that anxiety is increasing all over the nation. We also know that school avoidance and school refusal has been increasing, so that now about 2% of kids are facing that issue. And also, unfortunately, suicidal ideation and cutting, that's another area that's been increasing nationally. So we did want to bring in some people who had some expertise in these areas, and we went to Columbia University and brought in Dr. Pugliafico, who did a fantastic job teaching and training both our counselors and also our administration on how to help kids who are feeling anxious and avoiding school to get back into school quickly. We also had a training on dialectical behavior therapy, which many of the districts are using for more vulnerable students who have some mental health issues, and it's really a skills-based therapy, so it helps them with specific skills to get them back on track. Perfectionism was another presentation we were able to bring. And school safety. So we had somebody who's really a national expert who teaches the FBI and has been an international speaker on threat assessment, helping our social workers, counselors, and others to really know how to detect, assess, and manage if a child seems to have any issues around violence. So those are just a couple of things we've done this year in terms of professional learning. We continue to think student voice is extremely important in school climate. We know that kids have to have a voice and own that in their own schools, and we continue to have our student leadership groups at every level. They've done some amazing work this year in 14 Days of Kindness, spreading empathy through West School, Teacher Appreciation, Spirit Days. We have a summit where we bring together the ADT, which is the teachers and the kids, and they all work together on different ways to improve school climate. They've assisted with our school climate survey, making a video to try to get kids involved with it. They are part of our process as we goal set for school climate as well. So it's been great to see the kids continuing to lead this work as well. And finally, Objective 5 and 6, we have conduct parent and community education sessions on school climate, health and wellness, and social emotional well-being. And as you know, we had Dr. Robert Brooks, who was a wonderful speaker on resilience. I think one of the things we did really well this year is partner also with outside agencies such as New Canaan Cares and working with Meg Domino, knowing that just one presentation often isn't enough for parents, and so she was able to follow up with talks on resilience throughout the year, so we were able to really capitalize on that particular presentation. Similarly, we've been working on working with Meg, bringing her into the schools and to work at each level. For example, in the middle school, having parent talks on 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th transitions, and she's been wonderful about putting that together. And there are a number of other presentations. I won't go through them all, but we're really trying to do our best to reach parents and update parents on school climate work, and so it's been wonderful to be able to be a part of that and work so closely with parents. So what are our next steps? As I mentioned, really the next step for K-8 is to begin to roll out these anchor tools to the students. We'll be beginning that in September and October through December, bringing out the charter. Next, it will also be teaching the high school these skills, and again, just focused on the adults in year 1 for them. And the other exciting thing about Ruler is it does have a really powerful parent component. So Yale has done a wonderful job in giving us resources so that we do intend to bring parents in, train them on the skills, and have them help us with offering more workshops to parents and families so that they can reinforce these same skills at home. So that's really where we are. The other thing we did this year, of course, is our school climate survey. I don't have that data back yet, but I'm looking forward to getting it and seeing the areas of growth. And we'll be reviewing that when we do get it and have time to look through and analyze that and develop our goals for next year. So that's just a little bit of what we've been doing this year, and I'd love to just thank you all for your support. And I'm going to pass it over now to Joanne Rocco, the principal of South School, and Matt Kasich, the assistant principal of South School, who are going to tell you a little bit more specifically about one initiative they've had in school climate.
Thank you. It's sad to see that Susan hasn't been busy her past 2 years with us. It's wonderful working with Susan. She's so supportive in all the work that we do. Matt and I would just like to give you a brief overview of some of the work that we've done with one of our school climate initiatives related to service learning. All of our staff members and all of our students, K through 4, have taken on service learning projects over the course of the year. So we'd like to share with you some of the projects that they've taken on, the reason why we chose this as one of our initiatives, and then some of the thoughts of our students and some of the feedback from them and what they've learned from this initiative. So our learning community growth goal, which is one of the components of TEPL, is students will demonstrate a connection between curriculum in their lives through meaningful service activities. And we really did want to make it meaningful to students, so we gave them choice in this. Teachers had choice also. So there's a real array of service projects and organizations and charities that they chose to work with, and individual people also. A lot of wonderful projects have come out of this, and we're really proud of the work that our students have done and our staff have done over the course of the year. And students really enjoyed the projects also, and they really got involved in it. Rather than just donating something, we wanted them to really have a connection to either the people that they were working with or the organization that they were working with to make it more meaningful. And I think they really realized that they can make a difference through these projects over the course of the year. Why choose service learning? We really feel that even young students really have the power to influence others, and I think these projects have really shown that. And then, as a result, really develop some empathy and understand that there are many needs and that they can meet the needs of within our school, within our town, our community, neighboring communities, and beyond. So they've taken on projects across the country, within our school, small, big projects, and really just wanted to show them that they have the power to influence others. These are some samples of some of the service learning projects, so won't go through all of those, but several of them are related to, we've had several projects related to veterans in connection with our Veterans Day, and Matt will talk more about that. Our staff has also taken on a project each year. We do Passionately Pink for the Cure for cancer research. We all choose a date in October. We all dress in pink, give donations. Several food drives to donate the pantry in New Canaan, and sometimes kids will go out, they'll purchase the products. They'll also bag them and deliver them. They've bagged individual snack bags for the food pantry. Having Waveney Care Center so close to us gives us a nice opportunity. So every year we do several projects connected with Waveney Care. This year our music teacher has done a concert there. Next week I think it is, our strings teacher will be bringing students over after school and performing a strings concert for the residents. The past couple of years our kindergarten teachers have brought all of our kindergartners over to Waveney. After our Halloween parade, they stay in their costumes, they walk down Farm Road, and they parade through the entire facility in all of their costumes. So that's a fun day for all of the residents. Our reading specialists this year have brought some of our students over. I think about 5 or 6 students walked over with our reading specialists, and they read to the residents. So that was part of our reading celebration. And the kids loved doing that. It was one-on-one with the residents, and the residents loved it also. Our science teacher, after our science fair, has had kids after school bring over some of the projects and explain their projects to the residents, and that's voluntary. Quite a few of our students have volunteered to do that after school, and they walk over with their parents and with our science teacher and set up their entire exhibit and explain it to the residents. What also was exciting is that many of our students initiate their own projects outside of school. We've had many students, they do their lemonade stands, they'll do hot chocolate stands, and some of our students started in kindergarten and have done it for several years. They bring the money in, they meet with me, they meet with our social worker, and then they ask, where can we donate our money? What's the best use of our money? They've donated to our South School garden. They've bought some supplies for the garden. They've donated money to the pantry, done the shopping for it, and around the holidays they chose to to purchase some gift cards for needy families. So this was all on their own. So they're extending the work that we're doing in school, which I think is really nice. And it's just great that kids think of this. And kids will come to us with ideas, and we always want to honor their ideas as best as possible, because we think it's great that they're carrying this on and that they want to help others on their own, and it's not something that parents have started or that staff has started. They've just taken this on their own. So those are just some of the other examples of many of the projects that we've done, and those are just a few of the examples of types of service learning projects that we've done. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt, and he's going to talk a little bit more about some of the projects and just some of the responses of some of our students.
Thank you. Good evening. Just to go back to Passionately Pink for the Cure. For some of you may know that we have two very fancy staff bathrooms. One of them is dedicated to Elvis, and the other one is to the royal family, because we have a staff member who is a very big royal family fan. And every year, Joanne always takes a big picture of everyone, all the staff members who wear pink. And about 2 or 3 years ago, the staff member who is a big fan of the royal family brought in a full-size cutout of Queen Elizabeth, all dressed in pink. So she happens to be in the picture. And it's funny, I just had an intern interview about 3 weeks ago, and this big picture is hanging, first picture in the hallway as you're walking down to the offices, and the intern said, Queen Elizabeth was here? Because it looks real. He's got his hand around her, his arm around her shoulder and everything, so, anyway. So I just wanted to go a little deeper into some of the projects, just a couple of them. We've had a long-standing tradition of a Veterans Day Assembly at South School long before I came over 14 years ago. And several years ago, the committee said we need to expand beyond just the day. And one of the ideas was to have a collection for Homes for Our Troops. Several different organizations were thrown out into the committee meeting. It was a time when we had a lot of people coming back from Afghanistan and Pakistan and with severe injuries, and we looked into a lot of different charities that help the veterans, and this one came up because we felt that it would really help with the empathy, building empathy with children and getting them to understand that when they come home, sometimes they have to have, or there's special needs. Some of them have special needs. And Homes for Our Troops builds homes for veterans who have those special needs. The nice thing about Homes for Our Troops is we were able to specify the donation go to veterans from Connecticut who are having houses built in Connecticut. So we wanted to try to keep it as local as possible. So that's why we did this. So for about 6 years now, we've been doing this, and we've donated close to almost $7,000. The important thing here is we just didn't want a collection where the kids go home and say, Mom and Dad, we have a collection at school, can you give us money? So we started with telling them that, or we asking the parents and the students to have the students earn the money. And from that, they fill out a little slip saying, I earn my donation by, and some of them are setting tables, doing extra chores around the house. As Joanne said, some of them have set up lemonade stands, hot chocolate stands, and then they see the little slips. You watch the kids when the bulletin board goes up, and they start to get ideas from there, and it just sort of multiplies. So it's been a really successful project. And then we ask kids reflections, and as you can see on the slide, this is one, I earned my donation by making my bed every day and setting the dinner table every day for weeks. So the learning piece there also is responsibility, which of course ties back to our SAPL curriculum. Joanne mentioned going over to Waveney, the readers. This project came up from our reading staff who works with some of our struggling readers. And originally they were going to bring over a Reader's Theater production for the residents. And these are students who are really working on their fluency, their decoding, and the staff at Waveney said it might be better if you do some one-on-one so they get the connection with the residents. And so they changed it to that. And As you can see here, the students absolutely loved it. And they worked hard to build their fluency because they wanted to be able to go over and read one-to-one where they weren't stopping and trying to figure out their words. So they had a goal and they worked hard for it. And in late winter, they got to walk over there and they had a great time. And I liked how nice they were and how happy they were when we left. I also loved that I made them feel happy as a response to this. And most of the teachers do the reflections with the kids, and it's just, you see them smiling when they come back or they participate in some of these things, these projects. We also have a lot of research that gets done, particularly with the older kids and the projects that they've participated in. We have 2 students who have worked with Make-A-Wish. Our 3rd grade did a project that benefited Make-A-Wish Foundation this year. And not only did they do some research, but then the money that they raised for Make-A-Wish, the teachers brought it back into the classroom where they did a lot of estimating, counting of money. And believe it or not, we need to do a lot of work with counting of money because a lot of people don't use money anymore. So we do have to still teach them how to count money. So it was a great exercise for them. Graphing some of the money and setting their goals. They did a lot of graphing with that. So there's lots of connections back to the learning piece of this, not just the service piece of it. In addition to the SAPL, where they've connected to writing, math, research, things that, and certainly reading. And then moving on to our building connection to the work that we've been doing with Ruler. As the pieces of that program have been rolled out, the staff's been very receptive and excited about the rollout of this year. Staff seem more involved with each other beyond their teams and their departments. We've had increased numbers of TGIF breakfasts where staff are getting together on Friday mornings. We had a very successful January to April Friday Soup Club where people signed up, and usually about 3 people signed up for each Friday to different people for soups, and everybody could eat soup in the lunchroom, and it was a way to get people to come together, get out of their classrooms, and enjoy some collegiality and some camaraderie. We have a staff thankful for board, which is everything from I'm thankful for pizza to my husband, my children, M&Ms, just a way for people to walk by and see something positive and, it helps them smile. There was an earlier board in the presentation about what makes our school Pawsome. That came from one of our teaching assistants who came in over, I believe it was April break. And she created that board all by herself just because she loves working in our school. The level of input from our teaching assistants, our non-certified staff, has greatly increased as well. The school charter was created by a committee of 13 members, 8 certified staff and 5 non-certified staff. They created the charter. They have supporting documents for actionable steps for all of us to feel safe, valued, inspired, and supported. This work was done during some of our meeting times where everybody had input into this, and everybody's looking forward to living our charter next year. So our next steps, some of them are aligned with the next steps of the district. Continue our professional learning for all staff in the pieces of emotional intelligence as we roll it out. To start rolling it out to students next year. Continuing our service learning initiatives and expanding on those, and reviewing our school climate data now that it's in. Hopefully we'll get it soon because we don't have a lot of things to do this time of year. So we'll be looking at that before the end of the year so we could set some goals for next year. And any questions?
Thank you, Matt. Well, let me start off by saying thank you to you and Joanne for, providing these wonderful service learning opportunities for the kids. I mean, you're really creating sort of caring and compassionate adults in the future. So thank you. I wish my kids had had more opportunities for that when they were going through. So, and I also wanted to say to you, Matt, thank you for your beautiful the Veterans Day program that you helped coordinate over at South. Hazel and I had an opportunity a few years ago to attend that, and it really is a very moving experience, and those kids are so lucky to be able to participate in that, and it's amazing how many veterans we have in this community, so I just wanted to thank you, since I don't see you that often. And then also, Dr. Bliss, thank you for spearheading this very important work. I mean, I think you can't open a newspaper or a magazine and not read about all the social emotional issues that we need to deal with in this country, and so I really thank you for all your wonderful work in this area. So are there any questions or comments from anyone on the board? Jen?
So ditto to everything she just said. You guys are doing such amazing work, and this is so important on so many levels, so thank you for everything. So 2 questions. Dr. Bliss, you mentioned something about a program at Saks, and I think, I'm not sure, I'm just interested because my daughter is in kind of like a pilot program, and I think you said something about it having to deal with stress, anxiety, and it's something that's being tested out right now. Did you say that?
So it could be one of 2 things. There's the Stress Less group. I don't know if she signed up for that. That's the voluntary 8-week group. And then in addition, we piloted the 6th grade advisory. Is she in 6th grade?
So she's in 7th grade.
Okay.
So
then it
the
must
Stress
be
Less?
the Stress Less, yeah.
Okay, can you just elaborate? So is that something that's going to go to the whole grade at some point, and you're just kind of seeing how things work, or exactly what is that?
Yeah, it's a good question. We don't see that as for the whole grade at this point. It really is for kids who are struggling in some way, mostly. We have
I
all
signed her
kinds
up,
of kids.
so-
Yeah, so that's great.
She didn't sign up for that. So I don't know. Clearly,
I mean, I shouldn't say, who's not stressed, right? I think the
maybe
kids
this
really
will help
relate
her
to that.
in the future.
Okay, there you go.
Yes, no, it sounds great, so I'm just, I was just curious about that. And then another thing, just to elaborate a little bit on the curriculum, or the service learning.
Sure.
I know the elementary schools are really into that, which I think is so great, and I know one of our goals is to have, responsible global citizens. And, I encourage my kids to give back and to learn that, it's hard as teens to know that it's not all about you all the time, and to learn how to, give back, whether it's in your backyard or overseas. And, and I was actually talking to Mr. Egan at the high school about it a little bit, and because I was just involved in something, raising money for scholars, and I don't know, I would love to see that carried over, to the older generation, to the kids. Somehow, I don't know how. I know that there's individual groups that do it.
There are, sure.
But it would be so, I know a lot of the private schools, it's mandatory, you have, to donate a certain number of
Service
hours of
hours.
your time to help others, and I just feel like that would be so great somehow to incorporate that at Saks, at the high school, as our kids leave, we want our kids to be engaged in, helping others, so.
So as you know, there is a team forming that's going to look at the high school graduation requirements. And I know at least a few of the folks have expressed some interest in looking into the possibility of having service credits, service learning, some type of community service requirement as part of that, the expectation for students to earn a diploma from New Canaan High School. So I know they're looking at it. They want to make some determination as to what works, what doesn't, what makes sense. But as that group does its work and brings some information forward, I'm sure that's something that they'll be talking to the board about as a possibility.
Yeah, I feel like our especially, having kids that are, sophomore, junior, senior, they're so focused on colleges and grades and APs, but you kind of get lost, you lose, what your passion, helping others, and I just think that would be awesome.
Good point. Thank you.
Anyone else? Maria?
With the ruler instruction in the middle school,
Yes.
how many lessons do you foresee, and then the same for the high school? How do you see that working, and then how does it continue? Does it continue, because I imagine once you're trained.
It's a great question. So first, in terms of the lessons, obviously there's a little bit more explicit teaching in the beginning, and we're still working out exactly how that will look. We do plan in the middle school to put it into our existing advisories, so we'll have a new and very powerful curriculum for that, or framework for that. And the same in the high school. We're thinking about, we have connections there already, and using some of these ruler lessons to put that into our Connections program that's already there. In terms of exactly how many, I can't really say at this point. There are 4 anchor tools, so there are a couple lessons for sure on each of those. But a lot of this, and one of the reasons we really liked it, is it's a very flexible program. It's not meant to be, a curriculum or specific lessons as much as how people begin to just interact with each other all the time, and how teachers can begin to help kids with those interpersonal difficulties when they come up in the classroom, or talk a little bit as they're reading a book about how the characters were feeling and how they resolved conflict. So, we hope that once that explicit teaching happens, then there'll be a lot more that will happen sort of organically throughout the climate, throughout the schools.
And then will students see it in their report cards like the elementary school? The SAPL's standards, will they show up in the middle school and the high school somewhere?
We haven't addressed that yet. It's not something that we have talked about at this point. We really wanted to focus on that K-5 group, so we'll have to think about that.
I think you sort of highlighted one of the challenges as we look at it, how to scaffold it from sort of K-12 so that it does stay sort of relevant and age appropriate as the students go. And, in part, one of the, the approach has been to spend the year with staff, training them, teaching them so they could learn about it as well, so that as that design work is done, they're knowledgeable around what we're talking about and how to develop that sequencing, so that it does stay relevant for students as they go through K-12. That's also something that the Yale group and Mark Brackett and those folks are able to help us with, as we look at kind of what does it look like, and it's varying degrees of complexity, but the sort of the benchmark or those tools remain the same, but how the students learn to apply them and use them just in the course of their experience in life grows increasingly complex as they mature.
Yeah, that's one of the things we really liked. For example, with the high school, they have an advisory lesson that's really about transition to college and decision-making in getting into college and what that means and the emotional aspects of that. So they're preparing for that transition, but then in the background is thinking about recognizing their emotions and thinking about their emotions and strategies for managing their emotions when they get there. So although the anchor tools are there, it really, as you said, much more complex and developmentally appropriate for each grade.
Anyone else? Penny?
I just think this work is so important and great for our students. I look forward to hearing the updates on students' reactions as you roll out Ruler in elementary schools next year, and maybe you'll be back next May to tell us about it. But I was wondering, is there research that actually has gone out and has data that links maybe less incidences of bullying or less incidents of violence to an effective SAPL program, so that we should view this as another arm of our school safety
Absolutely.
program?
I didn't want to bring out too much data at once, but I think the other thing we know is that really effective social emotional programs have a protective factor around so many different things, including bullying, including substance abuse, which I think is so important. If kids learn how to strategies for managing their emotion, then we know they may not turn to other ways of managing emotion. So it is a protective factor for a number of things, certainly aggressive behavior. So that is our plan, and really it's so exciting to me that we're going to be able to give this generation of kids these skills that will put them in such a better place. Yeah.
Anyone else? Yes, thank you. I just, I wanted to piggyback on what you were saying, Penny, because I think, just looking at even the teacher goals about safety, I mean, I think, you can't, you don't want to drill it into too heavily, but at the same time, it is a big part of this, is that, having kids who are able to manage their stress and emotions, and, it leads to a safer school environment. So, I can't thank you enough for all this work. It's really important, and obviously the teachers think it's important too. I see their staff charter adds it in there,
That's right.
so thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your support.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Okay, moving on to our tri-state summary with Dr. Carenti.
Thank you. So I'm here tonight to just give you a brief summary of the tri-state visit that we had in November. They have given Brian and I a draft of the report, but we're still waiting for the final version to come in and be cleaned up. And once we have that final version, we'll be happy to share it with you. But we didn't want the year to end without giving you a summary of some of the findings that the visiting team found when they came in November. And also, I think what you'll find is some of the connections that we'll be making to some of the district goals. So I think some of the findings actually are right on target with where we're going with our district goals, and we'll present that to you this evening as well. So as you'll recall, we had the essential question that we created over a year ago. We had a tri-state committee that came together to really take a look at what did we want the team to analyze when they were here in our district. And the essential question was, to what extent are all students cognitively engaged in rigorous and relevant learning in our classrooms? And then certainly as a team, we thought it was very important to define what we meant by cognitively engaged as well as rigorous and relevant. So when the team came in to visit with us, that was their focus. They knew what our definition was, and that was where they were trying to find evidence in support of this or not find evidence in support of this. So in November, we had 18 teachers and administrators from New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut spend 3 days in our district. They camped out here in the Wagner Room, but they had the opportunity to visit all 5 schools. They spent the majority of their time in classrooms. They spent the majority of their time having conversations with teachers and students and parents, administrators, and Board of Ed members. And then the committee also created a website of evidence. So on that website, they may have found the teacher evaluation. I tried to ignore it.
Netflix is a little loud over there.
That wasn't part of the evidence, but, so anyway, but we did have evidence on the website of some of our larger district frameworks. So certainly the teacher evaluation and professional learning was part of the website, as well as our SAPL framework that was part of our website. All of our RTI work, our guidebook was all part of the website. And then there was student evidence that the teachers had submitted and the committee took a look at and then also put up on the website. So it could have been a video, it could have been a performance-based assessment, it could have been even an observation within a classroom where they were capturing what students were doing within that classroom. So when they gave us the report, you'll find that when you have that final copy, that they'll divide it into what they found at the elementary level, the middle school level, and at the high school level. And then from there, they talk about where they would see us going as far as considerations. Once again, this is a critical friends group that has come in to look at an essential question and talk with all of us and gather all of our input and really try to capture evidence that they find and how we're working on this question as a district. And then they'll offer some considerations of things for us to continue for our future practices. And then that's the decision that we make as an administrative team as far as what considerations seem to be on that path and seem to make most sense for us moving forward, and what considerations are nice but probably aren't going to take us in a direction that we would want to go. So at the elementary level, I think what was most impressive was the systematic alignment that they found among the 3 schools. And I think that we were proud of that because we work really hard to make sure that there is consistency throughout those 3 elementary schools, that there's consistency with the curriculum, that there's consistency with assessments. I thought what was really fascinating was the language that they were hearing from the students. So they really took a look and closely listened to student discourse, and they cited some of the quotes that they heard from kids when they were in classrooms, and the students' language might have been, "How do you know?" and "Why did you choose that?" or "I need to figure that out myself," or maybe when we work together, we can put this under new learning, and then we can put this under what do you think? Or they would share, oh, that group over there, they found a different way to solve that problem. So they were very impressed with the student discourse and the conversations that students were having about their work and the way the students worked collaboratively. And they found that evidence in all 3 schools. And they found that to be part of the depth of the student engagement and certainly leading towards that rigor and relevance. What was also important was how the teachers were holding those students accountable. So they had quotes within it, can you prove that? And can you find the evidence to support your answer? Or it's okay to have a different opinion from your partner. That's okay. Or why don't the 2 of you discuss that and determine what's most important from your evidence, what's most important from your partner's evidence, and then come up with a solution that incorporates both of those pieces. And then they would use words like, you guys are the experts. You know this. You need to explain this and share this. So they were very impressed with what they learned about the design and learning in all those academic areas in the elementary school. They were also found a lot of consistent evidence from the parents and how the parents described the elementary schools. Some that spoke about how they moved to New Canaan for the recognized excellence of education. And also, one of the quotes in the report was that they that the district has initiatives that actually work. And that's part of our district goals, so it was nice to hear that evidence as well. In the middle school, they too found evidence of student inquiry and discourse, as well as student-centered projects that were authentic and relevant. They found a lot of evidence of the universal screening teams and how they were using that data analysis to support their instruction. They were most impressed with that professional learning that was taking place in the middle school that was really supporting the SAPL and the TEPL frameworks, that was really helping to ensure the optimal conditions for students to be cognitively and authentically engaged in classrooms. And going back to some of the goals that were shared this evening in regards to, a learning community goal, they've done a lot of work on their habits of success at SACS, and we talked a little bit about that last week when we did standard-based grading, where we had an opportunity to share that, which kind of directly ties in with our SAPL framework. And they've also done a lot of work with the depth of knowledge and having a deeper understanding of what that depth of knowledge is. They go back and they look at how they design their assessments and their curriculum in regards to that. So they were very impressed. They were also found the workshop period to be an exemplar for cognitive engagement and how it really related to student discourse, self-reflection, and inquiry. So the workshop period in grades 6 through 8 is those quarterly assignments that the kids have, and they rotate each of the quarters. So that is where they might be having STEM, or they might be getting their Shark Tank experience, or they have their digital citizenship curriculum, or their health curriculum. So they did observations in there and found lots of inquiry and self-reflection in those areas. At the high school, they found a considerable amount of evidence as well in cognitive engagement across the disciplines. They couldn't help themselves but end up in our performing arts classrooms because when you exit out of the Wagner room and head down the hallway, you can't help but hear the music or see what's going on in the music tech rooms. So they were seeing that teachers were creating digital music with kids. They attended Spanish classes where they were only speaking the language the entire time that they were in those classrooms. They went to English classrooms where students were required to engage in analytic discourse, self-reflection, and inquiry. So they found a tremendous amount of evidence here at the high school as well. They were most fascinated by the variety of feedback that our teachers were giving to students, which really helped the students to think about their engagement, the rigor, the relevance, and what that project was entailing. And that feedback ranged everywhere from meeting individually with a student to responding to something electronically with students, so a wide variety. The students spent a lot of time describing their teachers as supportive, bright, willing to provide individual attention, about delivering instruction with energy and wit. And then they also found that the faculty really talked about their heightened awareness of student stressors, as well as their commitment to equity and access for all students. So they did find quite a bit of evidence in regards to our essential question. The report obviously goes into deeper discussion about each of these areas, but we did just want to kind of pull out some of the highlights that the report found to help support cognitive engagement within our classrooms. Like I said earlier, though, there also are the considerations for future work, and they did recommend considerations for us to take into look at. So certainly when we looked at some of the considerations, they are pretty much aligned to some of the areas that we'll be talking about when we draft out our district goals. Certainly we want to continue to develop curriculum and assessments that are analyzed against the definition of our rigor and relevance. So they were saying that when you're writing that curriculum or when you're designing those assessments, keep having the teachers go back to those two definitions that you've defined. What does cognitive engagement mean? What does rigor and relevance mean? And really make sure that you're fitting that in within your curriculum. They're finding obviously the evidence there, but don't lose sight of that evidence and continue to help develop that in your curriculum design. They thought it was really important to take a close look at the assessments, really making sure that you take a deep look at that depth of knowledge, make sure those assessments are at the same level of what's going on also within the classrooms. So, and vice versa. You don't want to have an assessment that's not aligned to the instruction that's going on, and you don't want to have, the opposite happen as well. So it's really spending time to analyze those assessments and the practices. What was most fascinating was they said, obviously as you're moving into performance-based assessments, you're going to need to start taking a look at your grading, and you're going to need to start taking a look at your homework and your master schedules. And these are all things that we've talked about, and you learned a lot more about when we talked about standard-based grading. I think Melinda had quoted that as we move into next generation science standards, the standard-based grading really aligns itself to what we are asking kids to be able to know and to be able to do. And that's certainly an area that's a strength of ours because we have that aligned. But as we start to move into more of this problem-based learning, it is something that we need to take into consideration when we're doing grades, and what will those report cards look like, and what will the homework look like, and how will we design master schedules so that kids have time to work on these kinds of projects. The TEPL document they were most impressed with. They really found a lot of information. They certainly were very complimentary of how well the district has gone above and beyond, especially with all the frameworks that we have, not only for teachers, but then for social workers and guidance counselors and speech and language therapists, that everybody has their own effective framework that they're working on and helping to grow. What they thought was really important was to keep the dialogue between our coaches and our evaluators, so that the coaches, the feedback that they're giving to teachers is the same kind of feedback that the evaluators are giving to teachers. Our framework is quite lengthy and certainly rigorous, and certainly a way for us to look at the instruction within our classroom, but it's important if you're working with a new teacher in particular to pick one area of focus. So if the coaches and the evaluators say, let's work on helping this teacher with planning, then that's going to become that first area of focus for the teacher. So it just helps to make that a little bit more consistent. Obviously, to continue our expansion of differentiation of instruction so that all the teachers understand how to meet the needs of all the students within their classrooms. That's been an area of focus for ours for many years now, but I do think it is something that we will continue to go back and to revisit and take a close look at and make sure that we're meeting that. And then certainly the last bullet here is right on target with where we need to go next with our technology as well, is really to help teachers develop ways to really enhance the use of the technology to push that cognitive engagement. And that's something that we'll see probably as a district goal for next year as well. Overall, the team I thought this was kind of an interesting quote. The team was reminded of the powerful impact of the teacher as they observed student engagement in a wide and impressive range of classroom activities at all levels. So it just reminded them of how much planning it goes into teaching, how much teachers really need to know the learners that are within their classrooms so that they can really meet the needs of those learners and help them to be cognitively engaged. And then certainly that the team really recognized the highly professional, dedicated staff that we have throughout the system, and they really believe that, based on the feedback that they receive from parents and from Board of Ed members, that they're deeply appreciated by the community. So I know this is just a quick overview, but we didn't want the year to end without us coming in front of the board to give you a summary of the visit, some of the quick findings, some of the considerations for the future, and certainly when the report is finalized, we'd be happy to share that document, and if need be, come back and do a full presentation where we can really pull it apart for all of you. Happy to answer any questions that you might have at this time.
Yeah, no, thank you, Jill. I know it's a big effort on the part of the district to host this, this visit, and so thank you for doing that. And I think, I mean, I'd love to see the final report when it's.
So would we.
So would we. I know, I'm like, yeah. Okay, well, do I have any other questions or comments from the board on the visit? Maria?
How is it different than the NEASC visit? How often is this tri-state?
Sure. I'd be glad to jump in there. So NEASC is school-specific, so it's really secondary, looks at high school, the New England Association of Schools and Colleges, and that's a 10-year, typically once every 10 years they come out for the visit, although that process is changing a bit, but it really is specific to the high school for secondary, where tri-state is K-12. And we look to do something with tri-state once every 3 years. And it can be everything from a consultancy like we did to more like a tri-state visit. The tri-state is a group of sort of like-minded districts in a lot of ways, where NEASC pulls from all throughout New England. So there are some differences, but the sort of philosophy going into it of peers who come into a district and they're guided by standards and questions to provide feedback, as volunteers and as professionals, we think that's a powerful model to use. So I see them as complementary in a way. I'd love to see NEASC go across the K-12, but really they do focus on the high schools.
So are the schools tri-state accredited? Do they have like a branding like when you're NEASC accredited?
No, we're tri-state members,
Oh, okay.
tri-state member schools, and we're listed that way. They really don't have a seal of accreditation, where, NEASC does for high schools, right.
But certainly teachers are trained. They have indicators that they train the teachers in so that when they're going into classrooms and administrators, so when they're going into classrooms, they have a lens of what they're looking for and what they're trying to find evidence of, and then they certainly are coming back and always looking at that evidence. So they have certain indicators. Certainly those indicators are really pertinent if you're going to do a curriculum study review of a particular area of social studies or science but most of the districts at this point have moved more to a consultancy model, which is what we did, which is where you design a question, and then you have the team come in and see if they can answer that question. They're finding that to be much more beneficial because it's something that the district has chose to work on. We've been working on cognitive engagement based on even our TEPL framework, and so it was a way for us to see, are we on target with what we're doing in our classrooms, and to put people who've been trained to go in and out of those classrooms and look for evidence and have conversations with teachers that aren't associated with our district. They're just going in and looking as a pair of new eyes, just looking at everything that we have. We thought that would be a great way to design our visit.
And just to very briefly add, just because the term consultancy can be a little confusing, the way the model works is the teams will come in and give you feedback and sort of areas for focus or consideration. They'll tell you sort of a little bit about the what, but they won't tell you the how. They're not coming to the school as consultants to say, you should do this, you should do that. So they give you point you in directions, and then the districts can take those ideas and, as Jill mentioned before, what seems most appropriate and aligned with the direction the district's going in, and we can then shape action steps around those recommendations. But they don't come in as experts, so to speak, to tell us what to do. They come in as peers and colleagues to give feedback on the essential question that we provide, and then some suggestions for future work that then we would incorporate into district goals and action steps and things that really are specific for the district. So we call it a consultancy, but they don't come in as experts or as consultants. They come in as, peers that can give us feedback that when you're in the middle of the organization, you're doing the work, you're in the school, working with kids, hands-on, you don't see it all in the same way as you do when you go into a different district where you're really able to just focus on the questions at hand. So they're able to give us very specific and helpful and targeted feedback. But again, they don't get to the how to do the recommendations. That's the hard work, the good work of the district.
And I can give you a good example of from years ago where they really came in and they did a math visit, and the teachers and the administrators kept using the words, differentiated instruction. But then when they really were diving more deeply into how is that defined, they recognized that people had different definitions of that term. And so one of the considerations was to come up with a district definition that everybody can look at, everybody can read, and everybody can thoroughly understand, and then teach towards that definition. And that's why if you look in advance of our cognitive, our essential question, we chose to define right up front what is cognitive engagement and what is rigor and relevance. And we were hoping that when they were going in, and we feel like that it was pretty successful, and having conversations with people, that they were asking them towards, questions that would lead to, do they have that same understanding of that definition of cognitive engagement? Do they have that same definition of rigor and relevance? And does that work look like rigor? Does that work look relevant to students? Are they kids really cognitively engaged in what they're doing? So we put that right up front so that when they were in those classrooms, and certainly talking with people, we would get that direct feedback from them.
Any other questions? Katrina?
I was just going to make an observation or comment. This dovetails nicely with the school climate presentation. Perhaps it's premature because I'm interested to see the rest of this, but qualitatively or maybe indirectly, it does seem like there is some evidence of school climate, social emotional learning having an impact on the cognitive engagement piece. And particularly in the elementary schools, and I know I've observed it at home as still having one in elementary school, but just the language and the problem solving and communication skills that I think are being developed through that social emotional learning, perhaps, just in the examples you gave and the quotes you gave from the students, it is exciting because it does appear as though you're starting to see evidence of that learning taking place, which I think is very exciting for the district and so important, as many said before. So thank you.
Thank you.
Penny?
I was just wondering, when you got the feedback so far, were there any of these considerations, and I guess also positive things that we're doing that surprised you? Some of the findings I would think you'd think, oh yeah, we knew we had to work on that, and some of it would be, oh, I hadn't thought of that.
I actually was really surprised when they identified, I didn't think about it, when they really identified the workshop period as an exemplar. I was actually surprised by that, and I think we've just kind of taken for granted that we've opened up this workshop period for students to learn more about STEM and to design. The Shark Tank is, them designing a product that might help them to make their life easier, and they go out and they research the product that they would like to design and why they think they should design it, and then they have a panel that they come in and they present to the kids, all present to the panel about their product and do a presentation, and many times they have the product there that's either working or not working, and then they're having conversations about if it's not working, how they're going to improve it, or maybe they need to do further research because somebody on the panel said, I think I know of a product that's kind of like the one that you've designed. But I was actually pleasantly surprised by that because I just didn't really think of that until they mentioned it. Certainly the digital citizenship and what the kids are engaging in and having dialogue about during that period, I think does exemplify that student discourse, the health lessons that they're getting in that workshop period as well. So I thought that was a surprise.
Okay.
I don't know, Brian, if there was anything else, but.
It was funny, the first thing I thought of was the same.
It was.
Because the work we've been doing there has been sort of organic and incremental as we've been doing it. And so for them to see it as something really special sort of got us to take a step back and say, it really is. You know? I guess other thing, you always like it when some of the recommendations do align with the work that you're already thinking about doing. Sort of what are those next steps? So when they talked about master schedules and grading practices and homework, those are conversations that we've been having. So it's nice when those things line up. Yeah, I think we'll go from there.
All right. Any other questions, comments? All right. Thank you, Jill.
So as soon as the report comes in, we'll
Yeah,
get it to all
that
of
would
you,
be
and then if
great.
you need us to do a larger presentation, we're happy to do so.
Okay. Thanks so much, Dr. Rendy. Okay. Right, so moving on to action items and our statement of accounts. Why don't you have the presentation and I'll get the motion. Do you have anything, Doctor?
Sorry?
I was going to say you can make your presentation and then I'll ask for the motion. Do you have anything you want to?
We do have transfers on this report. So we're 6 weeks away from the end of the fiscal year, closing in on the end. We have expended and encumbered over 96, almost 97% of our budget, 3% remaining to finish out the year. And we'll have transfers this month, next month, and the final transfers for the year. As we look through all of our accounts and identify funds that are needed in other places, it's important that we do these transfers. So there's 5 transfers before the board tonight. The first transfer we've been talking about for the last several months, and it deals with the needs in the tuition out of district account for student with special needs. This is the actual amount that is encumbered and committed right now. It's $201,669. If something comes up between now and the end of the year, we would have to fund that as well. Fortunately, within the entire special education budget, there is savings, and we talked about some of them earlier. We have savings from the BCBA, the speech, and those types of accounts that are contributing to this. We have purchase services that have $35,000, and we also have supplies for $10,000. So the total amount of this transfer is being funded directly through the special education budget. There's 2 transfers on here for facilities. The first is to deal with unforeseen, unanticipated repairs that have occurred in the schools over the last several months. We're now up close to over $200,000 for the year when you take previous transfers for this need. And basically, there was a large one that dealt with the boiler plant at the high school. And then there's $107,000 that deals with many major projects. I think there's a total of 15 small projects. The funds are coming from vacancies in custodians, overtime accounts, and substitute teachers that are running below budget. So we allocated from those accounts. The third transfer, again, it deals with facilities, and there's 2 pieces to this as well. Here's where the boiler plant. The second piece deals with our need to provide retrofitting for the gas lines that are coming in. We had talked about this during our budget season, that we needed about $215,000 to make the retrofit. When we went out to bid and received all of the funding requirements, there's 3 pieces to the project. The final numbers are $277,000. So we would have that shortfall in next year's budget. The other dynamic that comes into play with that whole concept is that we're using the savings numbers that Eversource gave us. We really don't know if they're correct. We have to kind of live through it for a year to determine whether it's correct. So with savings that we have in our heating account this year, we felt that we would divert those to meet some of these costs and use funds that we know that we have available in some other small accounts to come up with the 2 lower phased priced of this project, and that's $107,650. So this transfer would help us get at that and create some relief in our next year's budget. The fourth item here is another item that really kind of deals with next year's budget in a big way as well. We've been looking at copier bidders and the copy price print bid that have come in recently. And we started to really unpack the cost structure with that particular bid. It's a $400,000 a year bid, and it's really comprised of 3 or 4 different things. The equipment, the labor to run the copy center and fix the equipment, the leasing, and the supplies. And we believe that if we can purchase the low-end printers that cost less than $10,000 out of our operating budget, where we have money in technology, then that would reduce our annual payments by $40,000 to $50,000. And we're looking at insourcing the labor as well to save another $40,000 to $50,000. So our budget had a goal of saving $50,000. We think we can get it up over $50,000 if we do these few things. And it will help for next year. And then the 5th transfer is just transfers that the administrators did between supplies and equipment. They're small transfers for $3,000.
So, Joanne, could you just, for the board's benefit, kind of highlight that insourcing of the, the copier servicing? I thought that was you did a good explanation of, how much money we could possibly save by doing the insourcing.
Sure. So just to recap, we currently have a contract with Xerox to perform all of the duties. So it's completely contracted out right now. And they provide us with the equipment. They provide us with a staff person for the copy center. They provide us with a repair person who is on site, and all of the supplies and all the major repairs that are done for warrantied items. So that's about $400,000 a year. And very honestly, in my experience, proportionately speaking to my other districts, it seemed high. When we were scheduled to go out to bid, we did go out to bid. And when we went out to bid, we actually had them break out those components so we can compare and contrast and really kind of put together a package that made sense for the district that would be the least costly. In doing so, we realized that we had resources in district that are here that could be redeployed for that purpose, for both the lead person and for the break-fix person. So that would save the salary portion of the contract. And then by purchasing the equipment rather than leasing it, it really does save us about $50 grand a year. So those two components are going to be in excess of $100,000. And we're hoping to get better service. Well, not that Xerox not good, but improve the service to the staff. Push more jobs into our copy center. Right now, we're only at 17%. We want it to be at 50%.
Does anybody have any questions or comments? I just wanted to, again, thank you, Dr. Keating, for all the good work, because, these are big savings to the district, that take time and effort to find and implement. So I appreciate it. And I know everyone else does as well. Okay, so if there are no further questions, if I could get a motion to approve the current period transfers as presented in the statement of accounts. Penny?
So moved.
Second. Katrina? All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. All right, I don't see any public wishing to address us this evening, so we'll move on to announcements and future business. Dr. Letzi.
Sure. Hard to believe, but our next meeting with the Board of Ed will be on June 4th. That is our retirement meeting, where we'll be recognizing our retiring teachers. Also honoring our CABE Student Award winners. I've been meeting with them this past week. Very impressive. 2 very impressive students. We'll also have an update, as you've heard, on the school start times and the work that's been going on in the district a little bit. And at that, I'll be looking for some direction from the Board of Education as far as next steps. We'll talk more that evening about that. I also do want to share that just today, the seniors came in, and they didn't go to classes today, but instead they spent some time learning about LinkedIn. And then they went over into the auditorium and heard from Ben Carpenter, who's the author of the book, The Bigs. And he talked to them about the workplace, about preparation for the workplace, about all the developing the skills required to be successful in the future. Because tomorrow they won't be coming to the high school at all. They'll be going off on their first day of internship. So today felt a little bit like the first day of spring, because it's been raining for so long and everything that's happened. But I think that this is certainly a milestone for those seniors, to congratulate them, certainly on completing the academic portion of their senior year and closing out their grades, because what we do with those students is close the grades as of Friday. And then, of course, the senior prom was Friday night, so a wonderful celebration there, too. And then tomorrow, they start their internship. And I do want to briefly say thank you to the PFA at the high school. They are so involved with things that happen. From the post-prom over at Waveney that they put on for the students, that was just spectacular, to the presentation today and the copy of the books that they provide for each of the students. And they're short little books, very well done, very focused on kind of that career fluency for students. And then, supporting them in this transition, and then as we go into our internship. So I'm looking forward to meeting my intern tomorrow, and I know many people in the community feel the same way as our students go out and start this next phase. Junior parking now is unrestricted, and we should all find it much easier to park at the high school for the rest of the school year. But to just take a moment to congratulate them and all of that. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I did hear very good things about that internship presentation today.
Yeah, it was
so-
the second year we've done it.
Yeah, I
and,
heard good
I do
thing-
think
good
really,
feedback.
thanks to the PFA, we're able to
Yeah.
have Ben come in and talk directly to our kids.
Yeah,
It's great.
that's wonderful. Okay, so if I could get a motion to adjourn to executive session in accordance with Connecticut General Statutes 1-206. The subject to be discussed is personnel matters. I have a motion. Katrina, second. Penny, all those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you.